I often see two groups of people. One group of people, they want to do something, but they choose to put it off for the future. And they think about, I'm going to do this thing in the future. It's not the right time for this. And I see another group of people that they just don't have any direction. They're just sitting there and they don't necessarily have anything that they are interested in. I think of these two groups of people very similarly. And I think about, like, if you just got yourself going and you thought about the world as like, this is going to end. There is only so much time that I actually have. And if I sat and did something, and it doesn't matter what it was, and I did it for the rest of my life, I think it would be a good experience for myself. Now, I'm not saying that this is the right way to live, but I'm saying that you can accomplish a whole bunch in your life if you simply just apply yourself and start going at it. Now, for the first group of people, I'd say that I don't have time. I should be doing something else at this moment. I want you to think about all the things that you do in a given moment that doesn't necessarily relate or make you excited to your sort of main job or main roles, whatever that looks like in your life. We have all sorts of things like that. When you're brushing your teeth, right? When you are, when you're taking out the trash, when you are going for a commute, there's all sorts of moments in our life that don't necessarily require a great deal of effort. And all of those moments can be done, or you can be thinking about something that you are interested in and you're passionate about, and you can be spending time actually doing that, pursuing those particular things. Now, what I used to do a lot is to consume information, news, podcasts, those kind of things. And I'd be sitting there thinking about the sort of consumption. I wouldn't even be consuming. It was just very I'm kind of turned off. My brain is turned off and I'm just listening to things. And what I realized is that is time that I could be spending doing something that I find interesting. And I could be actually creating this world around me, for me. And I think about that a lot, in that, even if you don't have any resources and time and effort and all of that kind of stuff, you don't have any of those things, why wouldn't you pursue something, do something that you just find inherently interesting for the sake of the fact that it's just interesting for you? So, we live in an era, we live in a world where this is possible. We never had this possibility for a long time because these little things were not scalable, right? What do I mean by that? That it would be just your single interest and you couldn't scale it. But now we have access to the internet. We have access to different resources that allow us to put together some really amazing things in a very short period of time. So, if you're thinking about, say you wanted to create a car company, right? Like, it would be a little insane to go and create a car company, but people have recently done that, right? Like that is a possibility, to just create a car company. But perhaps a better way to do it is to think about, how can you do everything to get to the moment where you can create that car company, and it might actually be easier, and there are little steps along the way, right? So if you think about Elon Musk, for example, right? That's who I'm thinking about. Like, he didn't just jump into creating a car company. There was all these little steps to actually get there, right? Getting an education, thinking about, or getting involved in the whole startup life, all of that kind of stuff. And that all leads to something. Now, the same goes for you. What might it be, right? So you might be you might be in Indonesia at this moment, right? And you're thinking, well, I don't have any access to this. I don't have access to this culture. Last night, I want to give you something. So last night, I was watching this YouTube show with my son, and this guy, he was creating rockets. Good morning. How are you? Good. You having a good one? He was on this YouTube show. He was creating these rocket airplanes, and it was really cool because this kid was 20 years old, and what he was doing was assembling all of these different materials to create the sort of rocket airplanes. And clearly he understood what he was doing. Clearly it made sense with what he was doing. And so if I was actually watching somebody do this, and if I worked at NASA, I would absolutely call this person up and say, hey, would you come work at NASA? Now, in a different world, that would not be possible, where you'd be able to assemble people or find people that were just doing really cool things. And the only way that you'd be able to do that is if you actually started doing it yourself and putting things together. So if you lived in Indonesia and you wanted to, maybe eventually get hired by NASA, just start puttering around with things. Start thinking about all the different ways that, that you can actually create and build different things, and be part of the sort of cultural phenomenon. And yes, maybe you wouldn't be hired by NASA right away because you're an Indonesian citizen, but you certainly would get hired by a contractor, for example, if you were doing this and it was such a really cool thing. And then that contractor might lead you to a NASA job eventually. So I think my thoughts on this is to just start doing stuff, have gumption, get out there and just start exploring things. And it doesn't necessarily, here's the thing, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like you think it should look, because you just don't have the resources for it, or you might not have time. If you're sitting in a traffic jam, you can do all sorts of really interesting things. But of course, it's not necessarily going to be the same way or the same thing of what somebody else is doing that has, for example, they're doing a YouTube show. Then you might not necessarily have a professional studio. Well, that's okay. That is totally fine as well to actually create something. But then you have to just live with that. That's going to be part of what you actually do. And I think much of this world can be doing interesting, fun things if you just determine that you're going to do this. Right? So the other group that has no interests, well, just start pursuing things and trying things and finding something that you like. And as you're doing that, tell your story and use the different resources that we actually have available to tell that story. I think it's very cool to see that we have access to unlimited resources at this moment. But the thing that I find, I guess, unnerving is the fact that most people will not pursue it and use those unlimited resources that we have. And I think if there's one thing that I can encourage you to do, just start doing things, whatever that is. Just have gumption, pursue those things, keep going, and don't stop with it. I think if you keep going at something and you're just relentless, and you do that for decades and decades, good things do happen. It just takes a little bit of time. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.